We are live. Welcome to the Canes Insight Daily podcast powered by Anijar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Another Victory Wednesday. We got the birthday boy, Mike Ryan, in the house. A lot to talk about. Feeling pretty good. We're on time again. Starting to get a little consistent here. Maybe the Canes defense could take a page and get some consistency like we're doing, showing up.
I think we have a new secret to that, D-Money. We don't announce when we're going live until like maybe 10 minutes beforehand, and that way we can be a bit more accurate with it.
You're right. I guess it's possibly late when you control the time. But anyways, thank you for joining us. We got Pete behind the boards. Pete, hop in here. Or hop in here. There he is. Look at that. Oh, man, what an advancement we got here.
Pete, I miss you on this trip. You would have made it fun, although you would have gotten in plenty of fights.
No,
you would have gotten in plenty of fights.
I'm a lover, not a fighter, man.
There were these people that kept circling around our sections, and I don't know what happened in the fourth quarter, but they stopped coming around.
Listen, I end altercations. I don't begin them. I stand my ground on a lot of things.
You don't shoot first. I know that about Pete.
Yeah. No, I don't. But, if it comes to it, I'll be there and I'll be ready to battle.
Yeah, I think we should say first and foremost to anybody watching this in the state of Florida, we have no idea how bad this is going to be, where exactly it lands. We just know that this is a really bad situation. We have friends and family out on the west coast of Florida. For those even here, there's varying degrees of how bad this could be in Dade County and Broward and West Palm. Just stay safe, stay informed. Listen to your local government leaders, and hopefully we can all make it out through this and keep living our lives. And the only hurricanes we talk about for the rest of the month are the actual Miami football hurricanes. But I'd be remiss to not mention the people on the west coast of Florida in particular.
No, very well said. Very well said. Thinking every day. We got a lot of listeners out there thinking about all you guys. David Lake, bunch of people out there. We got on happier news. Reed Rambo, happy birthday, Mike. Mike, what's the plan? I know you had a massive trip out here to California. What are you gonna do in Florida?
Yeah, this is a weird one because I've been kind of working nonstop through it. I kind of celebrated my birthday with that fourth quarter comeback, and then I stuck around for a concert and went to Napa on Monday. It was just all a little rushed because of the storm, but this one's low key. This one's 39. So I'm keeping the powder dry for number 40 around the corner. But 39 is going to be a good year. And look, say what you will about this program. I've had some really terrible birthdays around this. I've had missed blocked PATs as the clock strikes midnight, and my wife turns to me after we lose to FSU yet again, saying happy birthday. Usually, I don't have so much joy following this program. So I was a little bit confused by the reaction because since 2017, I've only traveled to one win, and I've traveled a bunch to see this program, and I've seen a 300% increase in wins this football season alone. Like the last month and a half has been magical. I've seen Miami in the last 2 weeks win games that they never win, that they don't ever win, and they've won them. And now the narrative around this program is I'm supposed to feel bad because Miami barely got it over the line. If you would listen to the media or anyone on social media, should we have lost to Arkansas? Is that how we would have avoided this narrative by actually losing the game? Because it's almost like people are holding this narrow victory against Miami. Let me tell you something. That is a good Cal defense. It's funny how that doesn't become a good win anymore because Miami won it. Because that's what game day does historically, D-Money, is they go to places that aren't tough to play. They go to situations that aren't difficult for the opposing team. That's the whole premise around game day. Clearly, it ceases being an impressive win because Miami does it. And yet on the other side of the token, and I'm sorry to hijack this, but I've been stewing on this for an entire cross-country flight. Tennessee lost to a flatly bad Arkansas football team. That's a bad loss. The way people were gassing Tennessee up, I'm guilty. I gassed them up too. They were talking national championship. They barely tumbled in the rankings. It's not a conversation point. They'll be there in the end. Yeah, your media partner will damn well make sure they're going to be there in the end. How have they avoided this narrative? And Miami, having won, is in the middle of it. And why did someone rank Miami 16?
He was out playing golf that day, as our good friend Kevin Clark
That person, I don't know his name, from Wyoming, has he been able to address this publicly? Because he straight up voted like Miami lost.
He might have thought they lost.
He thought that they lost. That is an egregious mistake. This is a terrible mistake. It actually affects the rankings because Miami would be ranked ahead of Georgia. What's the logic in Georgia being ranked ahead of Miami right now?
They're probably the favorite. They played head to head. But that's not how you usually rank.
That's not like they lost to Bama. Bama's ranked just below Miami. Right. Bama one against Georgia was better than Georgia. You could argue that Georgia had maybe a more impressive win on their season. Georgia barely got out alive against Kentucky. And the narrative that's surrounded Miami against Virginia Tech and the narrative that's surrounded Miami after this game at Cal didn't exist with them. It doesn't happen in the SEC because it just means more over there. I saw Cal go over into the SEC and thoroughly dominate an Auburn team that didn't have a chance at winning that football game if you actually watched it. So I'm very curious as to why this narrative, because I know it's going to be bad come college football playoff time, why we're already getting started with the nonsense bothers me.
Just go 1-0. Keep going 1-0. I hear you. The whole reaction. What's bothering me about the reaction is not so much the rankings. That'll take care of itself. It's people cheering for a targeting call. I've never heard fans, like if you're on another team, if you're playing the other team and you're a fan of the team, you cheer for the targeting call, of course, right? If you're just watching a game, has anyone ever watched a game like, man, I wish they called targeting there?
I'm so happy you mentioned that because it is the loser's lament. And trust us, we've had Amari Carter on this team. We've lost plenty of games because of targeting calls. We kind of know what targeting is. I got refused service in Cal, which is funny considering they have signs in front of every establishment telling me everybody who they'd allow. Apparently the only color or credo they don't allow in the building is green and orange. Is weird. So they refuse service. I was just in here a couple hours ago. I'm not allowed in there. And you know what they're telling me? You know that was targeting. I'm like, my Miami Hurricane brain cannot comprehend blowing a 25-point lead, allowing damn near 3 football fields of offense to Cam Ward in 1 quarter alone, and you have the nerve to even run your trap, and let alone talk about one call. That didn't boil down to that one call. It boiled down to several failed third down conversions. It boiled down to Cam Ward and Xavier Restrepo going Super Saiyan in the 4th quarter. How do you talk about a call when you've blown that game so poorly? Talk about the defense. Talk about the broken coverage that allowed Xavier Restrepo to scamper for 70 yards and miss me with the illegal man downfield stuff. Number 1, that's an RPO. There's vagaries when it comes to that. Linemen were engaged in blocks. You want to back them up? Fine. But I'm talking to you, Reddit CFB, and I'm talking to every single bad faith aggregator that's out there that conveniently crops out the down and distance. You want to give Miami 3 more shots to score from the 12? Be my guest. Nothing was stopping Miami from winning that game. Not you, not your bogus calls. Quit being losers, Cal, because if you want in on this ACC game, if you want your game days and you want to be taken seriously, don't be coming around the coach's wives section, talking all your nonsense, and then disappear in the 4th quarter and refuse my service. That's not big boy football. Come back to the big boy table when you're ready.
Mike, I know you're ticked off right now, but I did want to point out one thing about your birthday today. For those of you who are joining us, it's Mike's birthday. It's your Brian Monroe year.
Oh, number 39.
Can you get a better picture of
yeah.
Honestly, all I could find was him wearing 15, which I guess he also wore. And this was what I found. 39.
Must have been a bad pun. I think I remember that bad pun.
But you know that Miami is back when neutral fans, forget the Cal fans are going to just complain about whatever. Their life is complaining about things. They're going to complain about whatever they want, and they lost.
Yeah.
The neutral fans watching these games, I mentioned earlier, cheering for targeting, which no one ever cheers for in a game.
I'm really sorry about hijacking this show. I've just been stewing on this for 3 days.
It's birthday time. The week before, when people were cheering for the rules. And now I say the rules like the actual rules you grew up with, like these new rules about burden shifting on a replay review based, like we had people lawyering in a fun game that you're watching, like a great classic game, and people are out here lawyering. I am a lawyer. Lawyering is boring. It's not something you do when you're watching a football game. People are cheering for the rules, not because they cared about the rules, because the rules, as they understood them, led to the call being wrong, because everyone knew it was incomplete, and led to Miami losing. So when you're cheering for the rules, that's when you know that Miami is pissing people off, because no one cheers for the rules.
There was an asinine CBS Sports 6-minute video that I saw where for 5.5 minutes, they were all saying, you can't overturn that. It took 6 minutes to review. How do you do that? And then the video ends comically with everybody agreeing the call was actually the right call, but they shouldn't have changed it because it, quote, took too long. So you had paid analysts stumping for the wrong call to be upheld. We're in a weird place. And I guess it's because Miami must actually be good. It's the bye week. I'm getting this off my chest right now. Next week, I'll be back to work. Next week, blinders on. We're all about Louisville. But allow me to hit a decompression point in the season and say the narrative that has surrounded this team for the last 2 weeks has been pretty bad. Also, y'all aren't watching the games. You're not watching. Most of the people that have come step to me on social media, most people voting out of the state of Wyoming, did not stay up to watch the end of that football game and formulated their takes based off of what was cropped and put out for public consumption. That's not the game flow of that game. That's also not how you play football. All right. Miami could have tucked it in, ran, flown across the country, just chalked it up to game day, historic, unprecedented atmosphere. No one travels that far that's not playing Hawaii. They could have quit after that pick six that Cam Ward threw, which was pretty abysmal pick six. It's a bad decision. Terrible. But they didn't. They were resilient. They've shown over the last 2 weeks they can be resilient. Now, I warned you last week. What lesson are you going to take from this Virginia Tech game? Because you match up well against Cal as well. Are you going to take away from that game against Virginia Tech that you can kind of turn it on when you need to? Or are you going to take away from it that we need to be serious and perfect and start out better in the game? Fortunately, with a 1 week's worth of sample, granted, it's a different situation because this was a Cal opponent that was very well prepared, had an extra week to do it. Kind of a little worried right now that this Miami Hurricanes team and Cam Ward in particular have kind of found out that we'll shake it off. It's not a bad thing to have. We can turn this on at any time, but that's like Shaq, Kobe, early 2000s Laker logic. That's not the appropriate logic for a team that's still looking to win their first ever ACC title. So I really hope over the course of this bye week that gets addressed because that's a mental thing. And then on the defensive side of the ball, there are some pretty clear and obvious corrections that Lance Guidry has to make to this defense. And it's not just personnel and injuries. There are some tactical things that teams are taking advantage of. One of the main things that we notice out there in Cal was over these last 2 weeks, opposing teams are very clearly going to challenge Miami to make tackles in space. And they are struggling to step up to the plate and answer that bell so far.
Yeah, we talked about it before the Florida game. We thought that's what Florida was going to do. Florida was just so pathetic that it really didn't come into play. But now you see Virginia Tech do it, Cal do it. The explosive plays really is the story of the game. The amount of explosive plays against teams that aren't really the last two games against teams that are not particularly explosive. This is not Ryan Williams out there or Travis Hunter or anyone making these big plays. These are, they're just, they're white guys, a lot of them. You had a Cuban guy juking out Ruben Bain and running 30 yards. So, we have issues there. But those are things you can clean up. A lot of mental stuff. We talked about the Deani Hill cover 3. I don't want to pick on him. That's just one example. There were others. I'm sure when you dig into the film and actually know what everybody's responsibilities are and how it's coached, Guidry seeing those, and we got a week to work on those. Overall, though, a great weekend. I enjoyed myself. You had some bad Cal fans in your section. The ones in my section were fine, docile.
Yeah, I had it overall. I had a really great experience out there, and this is one of the. This was certainly a trip that I did my absolute best to savor because I don't exactly know if I'll ever actually get another trip out to Berkeley for an ACC conference games. We're not done with conference realignment, but I was enjoying the absurdity of just seeing a terrible half of football. We drank that place dry, not just the Hurricanes fans, Cal fans, but in our visiting section, there weren't any beers, there weren't any waters available. Midway through that third quarter, we drank the place dry. I remember walking up a Coliseum's worth of stairs. It's a weird layout that they have there. Being really depressed with my football team. And then off in the distance, I'm looking over porta potties that they have kindly set up for the opposing fans. We didn't have a restroom out there. We had portos. And above the portos is this incredible drone show. It was really good. It's old school West Coast hip hop. And these drones come together and it spells out in the sky ACC. ACC as I'm about to enter a porta potty for a trip that I went to support my football team in a conference game, the entire other side of the country. And it was just one of those moments that I was like, I regret coming here. I really regret this trip. And thankfully, by the end of it, I would say that I enjoyed the finish, which I did, but my knees were knocking, dude. I got really nervous during that game. it wasn't really one of those games that I ever kind of felt like we had a shot to win. It wasn't one of those games I'm like, all right, if we get a score here, maybe we can, like, that stuff naturally will happen late in the later parts of the fourth quarter. But early on, I just didn't see a path for Miami whatsoever. And when Miami didn't get the targeting call, that was good juju right then and there, because I'm like, every other year that's a targeting call. It's not a targeting call here. Cam Ward has the ball. Xavier Restrepo is out there, who I know I got put on the wrong side of a Xavier Restrepo
Got
debate.
a comment here about it.
Put on it.
Yeah. Look, just because I think Casey Concepcion is a special talent and in this system might flash in different ways, Xavier Restrepo, even within that segment, I said, Ring of Honor. He is going to obliterate this record book for Miami. And anytime, and the opposing defenses know it, my wife knows it. If Miami needs a big play, there's one number that you look to, and it's number 7. And it was there throughout crunch time. So Xavier Restrepo, I don't know how I got in this mess. I'm probably the person to blame, but you are absolutely a Miami icon at that position. And I'm really happy that Michael Irvin's now going to be there on the sidelines when you inevitably break all his records, because it's a special, special thing. He's a unique player. I remember listening to your hype pod when he was coming out of high school, and your absolute ceiling, you thought he'd be a dog, but a go-to wide receiver, a guy that's putting up 160 yards and also adding to his game, doing things after the catch. I don't even think you in your wildest dreams could have projected this for this player.
No, blocker as well. I mean, he's the best. I say it again. He's the best receiver in the SEC. He is the best.
ACC, but
he's the best. I say SEC.
You said SEC.
He's the best in the ACC. He's the best human receiver in the nation. Again, we put Travis Hunter, Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams. They've created their own category.
They're demigods.
They're honestly the best players. Those 3 and Ashton Jeanty are honestly the best players I've seen since, I don't know, Lamar Jackson. I've not seen guys this good.
It's a pretty good era
in a long time. I mean, it's unreal.
In terms of superstardom too, and most of the guys that you mentioned. See, Restrepo out of that class, it doesn't feel like he belongs in that class.
It's like Monstars.
Yeah, he's not going to. I don't know what he's doing for his pro prospects. Actually, Pete, I wanted to ask you about Restrepo's pro prospects and if you've heard from scouts now, because we on Hurricane we had a 10-minute discussion about those pro prospects and how Restrepo might be a running back at the next level. And oddly enough, the better he's doing with the ball in his hands after the catch, the more I kind of see why people were projecting him as a running back. But what are people saying?
He's built that way. I mean, look, I think he's shown his value as a receiver. So I don't think that someone's just going to stick him in the backfield. He'll probably be a move player on an offense. But look, coming into the season, obviously it's easy to see when a guy comes back that they got feedback that they, probably didn't agree with or thought they could show more, right? And for Restrepo having been as productive as he's been in his career, but even before this season, it's more than just putting up numbers, right? You have to show different things as he's shown this year. I think he's still probably, because again, going into the season was probably a 6th, 7th to undrafted type guy. The way he performs week after week, there's going to be teams that fall in love with him. He got to run relatively well for his size, so you got to be at least in the low 4.5s there to really give himself a good chance here. But I don't see any reason why he's not a mid-round pick once it's all said and done and goes through the process. Again, that's running well, and I have no reason to believe he's not going to kill the interview process. But a guy like him, and people have seen Puka Nacua recently, right? Like, it's very tough to pass up on the combination of production and then if he goes out there and tests the way he is. But probably still in the 4th to 6th round range at this point.
I won't seize on the Puka Nacua thing. I think that cat's a little different with the ball in his hands, but I won't seize on that. I will say, though, to everybody's point and the dialogue around Restrepo, look, if I'm building out an NFL team, I think if I look at the lot of ACC receivers, Restrepo's not going to be the first name I build my pro team around, but it's a different sport. If we have a game for our life right now that we're going to pick up a football and play for important stakes in our parking lot or anywhere in the nation, Xavier Restrepo is a dog. And I'd like my chances of winning that game with a Xavier Restrepo above the other receivers in the conference. I'll give you that. He's an absolute gamer. He's hard to really put into words because it doesn't it doesn't really make sense. And those players exist. They're cut differently. They're special types of competitors, but we should not be doubting Xavier Restrepo. I am not doubting Xavier Restrepo. More so, I'm kind of marveling because if you look at the tangible numbers, this doesn't really make a lot of sense how he's doing this.
Look, the best players on this team almost exclusively were underrated, right? Cam Ward was a no-star famously. Dean Martinez, who people are going to have their opinions on him. Obviously, he's one of the most
coming off his
accomplished players.
I think Damien's coming off his best game as Miami Hurricane.
Yeah, I feel good. I mean, I continue to feel good about him. I know that's a controversial take, but this guy's ran for 1,000 yards 2 years in a row, pretty much. But he was a no-star recruit, a low-star recruit. Restrepo, a 3-star recruit. You look on the defensive side of the ball. Francisco Mauanoa was really not a big recruit. OJ Frederic is not a big recruit. And Ruben Bain was a big recruit, but I watched Ruben Bain's whole process. People always thought that he didn't have the body of what a 5-star defensive end should look like. That's why he never got his 5th star, despite doing everything that a 5-star does. So he has a chip on his shoulder too. This is a chip on the shoulder type of team at the high, the best players. And I think Restrepo is just another one of those guys who he's got a lot going on. I mean, he's short, he's a Hispanic guy in South Florida playing receiver. He has his physical, ailment on his face. I'm sure that was, something that growing up gave him a little chip on his shoulder. So the guy is he is a perfect representative for this team. And look, I mean, there's 2 weeks in a row. I mean, say 2 weeks in a row. This is 6 weeks in a row. The only difference between the first 4 games and the last 2 games is those were blowouts. He was balling in those too.
Yeah, and I was probably one of those that perpetuated the narrative around this player. Like, okay, your college roommate's taking care of you with the ball, but keep in mind what we saw in the Pinstripe Bowl with Ja'Cory Brown. All he did, granted, it was all the defense gave him, but sideline out, Xavier Restrepo. Sideline out, Xavier Restrepo. Restrepo makes what in my mind was an unbelievable ass catch where he positions his ass in the end zone in that game. And he's shown you now with Cam Ward. I did Hurricane. I said it wouldn't shock me if Xavier Restrepo's my hot take for this season is he's probably 3rd in receiving on this team. I was wrong 1 week in. That narrative was unfair around him because we've now seen several different quarterbacks go under center, and all of them look for 7.
Yeah, but I want to shout out to all the Canes fans, Canes Insight fans, listeners to this podcast that came up, said what's up to us. Appreciate you guys. A lot of West Coast Canes I've learned. A lot of people that were travel there, but a lot of people that are just on the West Coast Canes fans, and this was like their game to go to because it was the closest game they're going to get, especially ACC wise. Yeah. So there are a lot of
players' families out there too because of some of the West Coast recruits. Like that's the satellite game that they'll go to. It was cool to see. I wish the game itself would have had a different game flow and been a little bit more festive the way that Florida was. When you look back on it, savor that moment because it's rare when you get to basically have a wire-to-wire party like you did. College football, we've learned over these last few weeks, winning is hard.
Yeah, and look, the wire-to-wire party, if everything's like that, it becomes boring. You got to have the peaks and valleys. I know my kids, they think this is what college football is now because they've seen Virginia Tech and Cal back-to-back weeks, so they're going crazy. But it was awesome, man. I went to Yosemite. My son calls it Yosemite. This is the Cuban can't get out of it, but awesome place. I like Berkeley. I will say the bathrooms, to get into the bathrooms, I think you need to get Sean Connery out of jail just to break into the bathrooms at these various restaurants and establishments. But other than that, I mean, I like the hospitality. It was cool. Game day was sick. Pat McAfee was rocking the place, man. I got to give, you don't see it on TV as much as live, but all the little breaks, all the times the crowd kind of got dead, the pro wrestling in him came in and he was pumping up the crowd. So just all around awesome event, man.
Total showman. Switching gears briefly, I formulated this take on the Levitard show, which I just came from, and I'm curious what you think about it. We've noticed winning is hard. Miami's been in tough games against Virginia Tech and Cal. Miami was favored by double digits in each one of those games. We just saw Vanderbilt beat Bama. Most people didn't see that coming. One person did. We saw Arkansas beat Tennessee. Here's my theory. Everyone's caught up with conference realignment, and Ohio State's going to drop one, maybe at Oregon. I actually think this arrangement, when you consider the travel and so many more look-ahead weeks in college football, you're actually going to see more unranked upsets over higher ranked schools. Because look, let's take Illinois, for example. Illinois has poured a lot of money into that program. They have a head coach that's done some winning. If you are playing Illinois one week, but you're looking ahead because you got Ohio State next week, you better take Illinois seriously because they're going to catch you. That is a pro program that they got over there. You cannot take anybody lightly in big-time college football this year because that is a real thing. Now, I'm not accusing that's what happened against Cal. I think you ran into a good head coach that had 2 weeks to prepare, and I think you traveled across the nation. But that's also part of why I have this theory, guys, is there's so much more travel with these mega conferences. And I'm curious, Pete, what you think, and D-Money, what you think. Are more upsets actually going to become more routine when no one was actually arguing that when conference realignment entered the equation?
I think so, because of the portal more than anything. I think that's really what it is. It just, and we've talked about this before, but why are you going to go be a backup at an Alabama, at a Georgia, these schools that historically their recruiting classes are just ridiculous the way they stack at certain positions, when you can go play at an Arkansas? You'll get paid well NIL wise, right? You're going to be playing against all those same teams, right? You're in the mix there still, but you're going to have an opportunity to get on the field earlier. And it's not that these guys can't play at some of these other schools, but the parity in that respect, that the talent is just so much more spread out. I think we're going to start to see some of these teams. It's going to be interesting now. We've seen some of these teams drop, and I can't point to specific examples on their teams right now, but the way that Alabama lost last year, the depth just isn't probably what we're used to because it is so spread out, right? So to me, I think as the season wears on, I think we will see more upsets because of that. The depth just isn't there for a lot of these teams that we historically, I mean, we can look, it's a different situation. Obviously, Clemson doesn't use the portal, but I think it's the same situation there for them. It's just not top to bottom because they have a ton of NFL guys on that team as we're starting to see them pick things up, but it's just not from top to bottom what it used to be.
Yeah, I agree totally. It's the portal. Pete mentioned the top teams losing depth. The flip side is the other teams, the people that come into those other teams. So like, let's say Miami's going into the portal trying to be what they are now, a top 10 team. You're getting Damian Martinez, who's a power 4, at that time, power 5 player who's been very productive. Sam Brown, same thing. Those are the kind of guys you're getting in the portal. CJ Clark, Taylor Barron. These are power 5 players you're bringing into your program. They were already proven. That's high end, not a lot of risk taking in that kind of portal movement at the top end. The big teams like Alabama, Ohio State, on top of getting guys like that, they're also getting in recruits that have to play. So they can't just take in too many portal guys that are not proven elite guys.
Yeah.
So they're boxed in with that. The teams like the Vanderbilts and the Arkansas. So Arkansas gets a quarterback from New Mexico State. Was a great player already, but you can't just take a New Mexico State quarterback to be the quarterback at Ohio State. It's not going to happen like that. Vanderbilt, you could, and he still plays in a big conference, the SEC. So I think those kind of players make a huge difference. You look at Arkansas, their wide receiver, Andrew Armstrong, Texas A&M Commerce is where he came from. Then he went to Arkansas to play in the SEC, now one of the best receivers in the country. I don't think a guy like that's going to an Alabama. If Alabama gets a transfer, it's going to be like a Jamison Williams, right, from Ohio State. They're not necessarily – they might get one in a while, but they're not going to be living off these Andrew Armstrong types, whereas Arkansas can get guys like that. They also got this guy, Isaac Tesla, their number 2 receiver, who is from, let's see, Hillsdale College. So both Arkansas top receivers are from these smaller schools. They want to play in the SEC. You're not going to jump from Hillsdale College to Alabama or Georgia, but you can't jump from Hillsdale College to Arkansas. So you see that. Also, some of the guys you talked about, Pete, the guys that aren't immediately having success at these big programs might transfer to these schools and then develop there at a different timeline with less pressure. Landon Jackson, defensive end, signed with LSU as a big recruit, ended up going to Arkansas. Now he's an NFL draft prospect on the edge. So these are the kind of portal moves that are allowing teams like Arkansas and Vanderbilt to recruit guys that maybe aren't marquee enough for the big programs out of the portal, but they say, hey, come play in the SEC, come play in the Big Ten, whatever it is, and play.
And they're seizing on what you just outlined, because I guess the general notion is when the SEC expanded, added Oklahoma and Texas, and when the Big 10 expanded, I guess the assumption was that Rutgers and Kentucky football and Arkansas and Vanderbilt would just be like, okay, well, I guess that's it for us. We'll just gracefully bow out here because we're not a talking point. No, they're going to answer the bell. That's a challenge for them to get better. And if you watch that Vanderbilt Alabama game, that wasn't exactly fluky. Like that was certainly from a schematic standpoint, Vanderbilt knew exactly what they were going to do to Bama all game long, and they totally took advantage of that. That wasn't necessarily a fluky result. I know that if we play that game 10 times out, Bama's talent would win out, but it's not like that was the one shot that Vanderbilt would have to win. Vanderbilt was pretty good. It made me feel a lot better about the Virginia Tech performance. And then I had to conflate that with what we saw at Cal Berkeley, which was for 3 quarters, really frustrating. It looked like we got caught flat. That did look a little fluky in that you had such high intensity, unprecedented situation, college game day in your town, a lot working against you. We looked tired. We had played a lot of games consecutively there. I started making all the excuses.
Cross-country travel.
Dude, and it's for that reason that you should actually, the talking point around that game should not be about illegal men downfield. It should not be about a controversial targeting call. It should be about what Miami overcame to win that. What that quarterback overcame, because he was bad. He was bad to start that game. He made bad mistakes. He went into halftime, knew he had to adjust, and he came out and made a worse mistake. He really shook a lot of that stuff off. It's a special thing that you have. I'm not saying that this is a team of destiny like some have questioned, but I will say there have already been a couple of mile markers in this season that would make you feel, as when you put together the yearbook, that's where this team started to believe. That's where this fan base started to believe. That's where this team turned a corner, not just within the season, not just within the game flow, but narrative-wise, treetop view on this program, things that went south before to other incarnations of this team, they're now going right for Miami. They're on the right side of the replay, where last year they weren't on the right side of the replay. They're on the right side of the targeting. When Amari Carter was here, they were never on the right side of the targeting. These things just tend to happen when you kind of right the ship. And I come away from the first half of this season thinking that maybe the ship hasn't been totally righted, but Miami is well on their way. And as crazy as the college football landscape is right now, the man in charge at the top has a pretty good grasp on where the sport is going and how to oversee it. And I think we should give him his flowers too, because game management was something that was always held against him. And I know I was in my chair a little confused as to why we didn't take that timeout, and a little confused as to why we went for 2 when we did. And guess what? Those were the right calls. He's fixed it in a year. He's fixed it so far. So I think that this has been a real special season with a lot of special little signs for you to actually feel a little bit better about your team. And maybe not enough of you are talking about that because you've won the last 2 games by like a combined 5 points. But these are good moments, and these are good things, provided that you don't get your head too inflated by the fact that you can just come back at will, seemingly.
Yeah, margin for error, I think, is a big thing in college football because there's so many weird things. These are young kids. There's going to be games where things go crazy. That's just how college football is. But the best teams have a margin for error to absorb some of that because they just have more talent, just more belief in a lot of instances. And it's like when Alabama in the past would go down early, you'd be like, all right, they're going to, they'll come back. It's just a matter of time. They would. That's the margin for error that talent allows you. I think when you're Miami and you just have 277 yards in 1 quarter with, a good defense on the other side, that's why you have that margin for error is your offense is operating on such a level. Now, if the defense doesn't tighten up for the reasons we've talked about all week and talking about a little bit today, you're going to be in so many shootouts that eventually the bounces are going to go the wrong way and then forget about it. But if the defense gets to a more manageable level, this offense is so good that it's hard to totally screw it up because they are going to eventually get it right.
Yeah, one of the hot takes that I had there, D-Money, Miami's got so much talent along the lines, and they've got this offense that it's going to be really hard to blow Miami out. I don't see them getting blown out. And I said that approximately 25 minutes before Miami got blown out for 3 straight quarters. But I guess at the end of the day, the take stands. They're hard to kill. And if you give this team daylight, I hope most teams have learned that if they're up big on Miami, they keep it going. I'm not really sure if Cal, look, the end results were there. And I think a lot of people are giving Guidry credit for making some adjustments. Me, myself, here's what I saw from the stands. I saw Cal just miss throws. And you want to feel better about it. You got the stops. They didn't convert a third down on their own. I know that there was the face mask penalty. You want to feel better about it? I'm ringing the alarm still. I didn't see the adjustments you guys saw. I saw a quarterback that got his bell rung late and had plenty of wide open receivers on that final drive, and he just sailed the ball because he got rocked pretty hard by Basaint the drive before. I think Miami, if you want to talk about luck, Cal just started not executing the plays that they were executing for 3 quarters in that game. They had a play drawn up on the outside in space, throwing the flats just off the fingertips. They have multiple wide receivers streaking open 20 on crossing routes, 20 yards downfield. Mendoza just sails the ball. I don't think he was right, and I do think that concern for this defense is appropriate. I think the bye is coming at the right time. Defenses, opposing offenses know how to handle this defense now, and it's on Lance Guidry to make the appropriate adjustments. From a personnel standpoint, is playing Patterson the move? Does that help you? Because I like Mish potentially as a nickelback, but there's some tackling responsibilities there too. They're going to challenge him to make plays in space. From a personnel standpoint, these players just have to execute better. No?
Yeah, I don't see a Mish Powell getting benched or a Jaden Harris getting benched. I mean, I've heard that on the boards and in the chat. That's just, maybe I'm wrong. I could be. That to me seems unrealistic. I think you could see Patterson more in packages, but who's more likely to make mistakes? The 6th-year guy who was playing in the national championship last year and had Ivy League offers, or true freshman, if the mental mistakes are the issue. Not saying they can't happen, because the 2 starting safeties we have obviously have had mental mistakes, but I trust them more to tighten it up than a true freshman. I don't think that's the solution. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I could be wrong, but I think the expectation is those guys take the time to settle in, tighten up, particularly Jaden Harris, who didn't have as much experience as Mish, first-time starter, realizing he cannot come in so hot on these screens. That's twice in a row he's been burned, just flying in without any kind of discipline, giving up, potentially back-breaking plays.
Guys, real quick, a comment here from Just Jay, who I don't completely agree with, but it kind of goes to the point that I was going to make. He says, y'all blowing the defense issues out of proportion. It's good enough to stop teams from scoring long enough for Cam Ward to win the game. Simple as that. Look, defense in college is hard. You're not going to have the 86 Bears there every game. But to me, they've got to just cluster some stops early in the game together, which the last 3 games has been an issue. You got to get multiple stops in a row, because I think if you get that lead, because they have not been able to play with the lead the last few games here, even against USF, they had to really battle back in that one and then control the second half. But the defense, I think, looks completely different if they're playing from in front. And, you can talk about different schematic things, different personnel, all that's fine. But if this defense gets stops early in games and the team can grab control of the game early, I just think it changes the complexion of what it's going to look like in the second half.
No doubt. And I see some of the feedback in there saying Mike was drunk. Apparently you missed what I said earlier in the game. I wish I were, but I couldn't have a drink. They drank that place dry. And I'd love to blow smoke up your butt right now and tell you that we locked in there and I saw what everybody else saw. I didn't. I saw receivers striking open and a quarterback that was making the throws, credit to him, all game long. Incredible burrito, by the way. One of the best I ever had. He started missing throws late in the game. These guys were open. You got a little lucky. If people want to say Miami got lucky, of course you need luck to get back into a game when you're down 25 points or whatever it was. That's where Miami got lucky, in that when it came time to execute in crunch time, players that were executing all game long all of a sudden stopped executing.
Yeah, I think the pass rush got there too towards the end, which led it to
affects the passes, no doubt.
Yeah, and I think to your point, Pete, this defense needs to be third down, red zone, field goals are okay. You need to play like you have the number 1 offense in the country, which Miami does. And I think part of what could be happening in the bye, is my speculation, is maybe simplifying things a little bit. Guidry likes to do a lot. He likes to keep offenses off balance. That's something he believes in passionately, and he's had a lot of success doing it. But now seeing 6 games, having a chance to breathe, not to worry about an opponent on Saturday, and saying, we now know we have the best offense in the country or close to it. How do we plan around that and build a defense complementary to that offense to win to win games as opposed to being the number one defense in the country. I think that could be something you see over the break. You do have Ruben Bain back. I think back to the Indianapolis Colts with Peyton Manning. They were such a dynamic offense that really the other team couldn't run the ball because the score was such that they just didn't have the ability to control the game that way. Indianapolis would put up 14 points real fast. So what ended up happening was Indianapolis played their safeties very far back, so you didn't have deep passing available. And then their pass rushers, Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis, were able to take over the game and get sacks. Those Indianapolis Tony Dungy defenses were not dominant defenses, but they were very good in terms of allowing Indianapolis Colts to win football games and play with the offense. I think that's what you're going to see here. This offense is going to get leads. If you can just rush the passer with Tyler Barron and Ruben Bain, if you could keep those safeties from back and avoid these explosive plays, which have killed us, because this defense is doing well on a lot of metrics aside from explosive plays, which obviously makes a difference. You've seen it the last 2 weeks. We can avoid those explosive plays.
It's already too many on the season.
Oh, it's horrible.
We're already well past the point of comfort for a team that's supposed to be contending inside the conference.
Against not explosive teams, which is what's scary. Get those safeties back, play it safe, keep it a little simple, run to the ball, tackle, and get pressure with your great defensive ends.
Yeah,
which
Aaron Frazier says I hear. We talked about it earlier in the week. I'm confident in the guys they have in that front four, especially with the pass rush ability we've seen from the interior from Simeon Barrow and Akeem Mesidor. Right now, you have to stop the run to be able to get in those situations. If a team falls down a couple scores, they're not most likely going to just abandon the run altogether, right? So there is the threat of that. But I think you got the dudes up front, and now with Bain back, I would like to see that more as well. But I expect Coach Guidry to make some adjustments.
I've enjoyed the discourse surrounding Damian Martinez, and I've heard you guys weigh in back and forth so far up into this week. I already gave him his flowers in that. I think that was his best performance of the season. I think he's a lot better than advertised when it came to his ability inside the passing game. But again, another game comes and goes, and he's not Miami's most impactful back out of that backfield. I think he showed in that game the experience gulf. Maybe we put too much on Jordan Lyle. I think Jordan Lyle had some moments in there where you kind of noticed, okay, he's young, and this is a big moment for him, where Damian Martinez kind of settled down there. But again, I don't think it's a terrible thing to say that he's not as effective as Mark Fletcher, because Mark Fletcher is progressing at the point in his career where we all kind of hoped he would be this guy. It's not a surprise to me that Mark Fletcher is already more impactful than the big time guy that produced a bunch on the West Coast in Damian Martinez. Damian Martinez can still be good. I just don't think it's a slight to say he's not as good as someone else on the roster. That just means you have an improving roster.
A lot of time left on the clock. I think both these guys are going to need them both. There were two great questions from Juan Ventura, Mike, that I wanted to get to because they're both college football questions. I'll start with this one. And Pete, you're directed at this one too. So whoever wants to jump at it, I have mine here. Who do you compare Ryan Williams to and Jeremiah Smith to? I will jump in with mine first. You guys can jump in. Ryan Williams, to me, this is kind of an old school comparison, but Lynn Swann, man, when you go back and watch his old film, this guy was the most graceful player of his era. He, in fact, was a skilled ballerino. I believe it was a skilled ballerino. I'm talking about he actually did ballet, like the moves. Go watch it on NFL Films. Put it on YouTube. Pete, if you can find Lynn Swann on YouTube, although it might screw up our copyright. He was a true ballerina. Maybe get a picture. Ryan Williams and his grace and his body control with his feet, the strength of his feet. You ever see those, I'm a ballet connoisseur. I like wrestling and I like ballet in terms of the arts. So you go to a ballet, you see their feet are very strong. They're meant to look like they're floating, but their feet are actually very strong and powerful. So Ryan Williams, when he gets on that sideline, he's like a ballerina. He's spinning this way, spinning that way. He's staying on balance. You need incredibly strong feet and graceful feet to pull it off. Lynn Swann, Ryan Williams, ballerinas on the field. That's my comparison for him. And then Jeremiah Smith, Andre Johnson.
Really? Andre Johnson, Julio Jones.
I was going to say Julio.
I would say to me, I actually think he's better than Julio Jones. He will be better than Julio Jones.
I think he's got better hands than Andre too.
Andre worked on his hands a lot at the same age. I would agree. When Andre first got to UM, he had drops. He eventually worked his way to when he got to the pros. He was pretty good. I think the size is similar with those two. The speed is similar with those two. Andre Johnson probably a little faster. Andre Johnson was like a legit 4.3 guy. He won the 60 meters in college.
Pete, your thoughts?
But the seriousness, the serious demeanor of Andre and Jeremiah Smith.
The approach to the game.
Yeah, no, that body type wise, same build. I thought Julio, but Andre works well. I mean, I was gonna go with a more recent comparison for Ryan Williams, and I was gonna say Justin Jefferson. I see it, the way they can contort their body, and again, Jefferson. We've talked about the play strength of receivers, but Jefferson's not a muscled up guy, right? And Williams is still young, and his body will continue to fill out. But Justin Jefferson was someone that he reminds me of.
I think the Julio comparisons are on the money for Jeremiah. I think his hands are really special at this age. For Ryan Williams, he reminds me of a couple players. When he was dancing along the sidelines, that's an agility that Randy Moss would have that he would surprise you. And when Ryan Williams gets going, he kind of has Randy Moss's gait, which is odd because Ryan Williams, the player that I was going to actually mention that he reminds me a lot of is Isaac Bruce. But Isaac Bruce, in terms of like being able to contort his body and make those contested catches on the sideline and then pull away, that wasn't really his game so much. It's a Randy Moss, lankier receiver type, but the way that Ryan Williams is built and his approach to route running and his hands and just the way that he looks out on the field just reminds me a lot of Isaac Bruce.
Broward County guy as well.
A generational receiver that is like really underrated. I guess he was just quiet.
Yeah.
I don't know why history doesn't look back.
There were a lot of good ones in that era, but he was a good one. Pete, by the way, pull up the Pete. I put something in the private chat. Pull that up here. Pull the picture up here. I sent you in the private chat. So I want to show Lynn Swan for those who don't know.
He was a ballerino.
He was a ballerino. Again, by the way, the ballet, Miami City Ballet, big fan. Check it out. Unbelievable performances. Look at this guy right here. Look at this. Look at that leaping ability, the grace. I mean, that's Ryan Williams pirouetting one way. I believe they call it a fatwa, something like that. Ballerinos, if you're in the chat, let me know. But that's the spin, the double spin, and the footwork on the sideline is ballet-esque for Ryan Williams. Lynn Swan.
He plays bigger than his size, and he's probably going to grow. Special talent. Even in that game against Vanderbilt, like the play that he made along the sideline against Vanderbilt was just nuts. He's just a crazy talented player.
I got another one for you.
Here's the other question, D, from Juan Manuel Ventura here.
Well, he's cogging it because I got another one I want to get to from him. So he's on fire. But that's a good. Let's go with that one about Elijah Lofton. I think as the coming out of the bye, he's going to get more playing time. We've seen him as a lead blocker, making collisions. We've seen him inline blocking. We've seen him running basic routes out of the backfield. We've seen him catch and run. He can carry the ball. He might be the best running back on the team. I'd say that without any exaggeration at all. Seeing him at running back, he could be just as good as Fletcher or Martinez if given the chance. And he's a great receiver. He has releases. He has routes. He catches the ball with his hands. He can adjust. He can do a lot more than we've seen.
Sorry, but Assad Hussein asking what players you want to see play more going forward. We did an entire show on that yesterday, Assad. So, if you want to go check that out, we were on there and we went.
How's this for a name? Reese Poffenbarger, because I'd like for some of these games to be blowouts a little bit. I'd like to see Reese out there taking some knees in the fourth quarter because these last two weeks have not been good for my health. That's what I'd like to see out there. And for Elijah Lofton, he's a true freshman. That position's the most stacked it's been since when? 2016, Pete? From an NFL, like they got 3 NFLers right now that are getting. That's pretty good. Like you're making good on recruiting promises that you made to Elijah Lofton. He is playing. Williams is playing, and you have a guy who has shown not only that he can remain healthy in Arroyo, but a guy that's making plays that are shocking to us. The effort, the hustle, the blocking is catching us a little by surprise that he's got this much dog in him. Maybe it's because he just flatly hasn't been out to be on the field over the last 2 years, but I am blown away by the approach to the game that Arroyo has displayed at this midway point of the season. I think that position, remember in 2016 and 17 when we realized those are kind of our best threats on offense. And we just started calling tight end screens, probably too many of them. We wanted to run Rick's son out of town because that's all he started doing. But maybe more design play calls for these guys because I would love to see Lofton get into the open field with a head of steam. Unfortunately, he's one of the guys blocking right now because he's effective at that too. So the complaint, that's a good problem to have. Have my true freshman tight end who's third on the depth chart get more snaps. I wish we'd be so lucky.
there's a question. I want to talk about this, and Juan Manuel set us up. I promise we'll get to some other questions. He just has some ones that kind of lined up with what we want to talk about. 2 most overrated teams so far, 2 most underrated teams so far. Just give me 1 and 1, and then I'll give 1 and 1.
In the nation right now,
nation.
Overrated. I think I'm guilty of gassing Tennessee up. I think over the last 2 weeks, I have way more questions than answers now. I think I was super impressed with what they did against NC State. Turns out NC State, bit of a lemon. So I still think that's a playoff team. I still think that they're championship good, but I had them as, in my mind, a couple weeks in, is this the certifiable national champion, number 1 seed in the college football playoff? And I think we learned a lot with that performance at Arkansas. Wasn't really prepared for the question, so let me rack my brain around it some more. I think Oregon, people are kind of forgetting the struggles that they had earlier in the year. Now, thankfully, what ailed them, that offensive line, it can be corrected in the season. There's technique that you can teach. And quite honestly, it was a little shocking how bad they were in the trenches to start. But some of that stuff is staying with me. Like, I'm not forgetting that Idaho performance from them. So I'd keep an eye in Oregon. I think a lot of people have this chalked up as a big-time win at home, prime time against Ohio State. Look, Ohio State probably has a loss on the record, but I would say that Oregon's looked a little funny in the light, and I'm not going to overreact because of the last 2 weeks with them anyways.
Those good ones. I'm going to say, to me, the overrated Ole Miss, to me, I think they're capable of good games. I don't find them to be a physical, tough team like you need to be to win at this high level where they're at the top 10. I don't see the toughness from this Ole Miss team. I don't think they can run the ball as physically as their opponents in the SEC. I don't think they can play defense as physically as the teams they're going to play. Of course, the one loss on their schedule is Kentucky, which lives in that world. There are teams that can do that plus more. And I think if you look at the SEC, there's a lot of those teams. Big Ten has them as well. I think Miami could be one if they tighten up the defense. So I don't see the physicality with Ole Miss. And maybe that's Lane Kiffin just being an offensive kind of guru kind of guy. I don't like the makeup of that squad in terms of making a true run here. Underrated, and this kind of was going to relate to some of my picks that I made here, LSU. I think LSU is a rising team. I think Brian Kelly teams, you saw last year, they kind of get going more as time goes on. Blake Baker's a good coach. He's getting his defense lined up. They've been playing better lately. And I really believe in Nussmeier. I think he is going to completely dominate this week. He really, to me, is very, very talented, has a great arm, and I'm excited to see him perform on a national stage because he is a natural passer. I'm not going to say he's better than Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, some of the top quarterbacks this year, but I'll say if he stays in college, which he probably should, and get some more reps, I think Nussmeier's the number 1 quarterback next year.
Wow, interesting. Underrated. I think it's kind of weird to call the top ranked team in terms of win-loss record, but the top of that SEC conference right now is Texas A&M, and I think their defense is rocking. I saw everything that you'd want to see out of Connor Wegman. I know in other group chats that we have, it's a big debate. Who do you start, Wegman or Reed? He looked really good against Mizzou. Mizzou, funny in the light that team was. And also I'd say that this is awfully convenient argument, but some of the teams that Miami has beaten, I think, are specifically being underrated because Miami beat them. Cal's got an undefeated test against Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh. Now, difficult spot. They just lost an emotional game. They're flying across the country, but Cal can win that game. And then we look at them a lot differently. I think it's a bad loss to FSU. But again, this travel across country is going to change the math a little bit. And I think Virginia Tech has shown you their season could have gone 2 ways. They could have packed it in after that heartbreaking defeat to Miami. They traveled across the country, not too far from where we were, and they thoroughly handled Stanford and Palo Alto. So I think Virginia Tech's a little bit better now, especially that you see that Vanderbilt result makes a little bit more sense with the effort that Pavia and Vanderbilt put on the Crimson Tide over the weekend.
By the way, shout out to our guy here, Boyo in Hamburg. He's in Germany. Kickoff for the Cal game was 4:30 a.m. No excuses. Made it happen. Shout out to you, Boyo. So, we got chat's cooking here. Let's see. What do we got going on? You've been quiet for a minute.
No, I was gonna suggest we get to picks now in the next.
Yeah,
let's jump on those picks.
Let's do that.
See, I forgot Peter was on kerfuffle. That's a mistake. Peter fans.
That's
of
why
which
we
you
have them
numerous.
on this high-tech screen, the Zordon screen.
All right. Here we go.
Oh, I love this. We're going head-to-head here. We have some
And your font is back to normal.
yeah, we have some agreement. All right, this should be good.
All right, let's start where we're on other sides of this thing here.
Well, fresh on your LSU point, why do you like them this week?
Again, I think Ole Miss is going to have trouble stopping them. I think they're peaking at the right time. I just don't believe in Ole Miss. Now, Ole Miss is streaky, so Ole Miss could have a good game and then, blow this up because they are capable of having one good game. I just don't think they're consistent. But I really think this is the Nussmeier breakout party. Jackson Dart gets a lot of attention, rightly so. Smart guy, good intangibles, productive player. But my guy Nuss, I think, is the best passing quarterback. Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, they could be, but they have other stuff with their athletic ability, particularly Ward. But man, Nussmeier, the just beautiful release, coach's son. I'm a huge fan. I think this is a breakout performance for him.
We both have Kansas State against Colorado, and you've been very pro Colorado. You have a pretty good read on this team, so I'm curious as to what your logic is. My logic is too well coached, too good a team. Talent's going to win you some games when you're going up against, a Bobo across the field there. I don't think that's a situation this week for them. This is a big game. Colorado's starting to feel themselves a little bit. Kansas State, I think they're catching them at the right time. And they're going to actually show them that there's more to this than just talent.
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you said. Kansas State's too well coached. It's a bad matchup for Colorado. They can control the game. They're a desperate team as well. I mean, both teams are going to be highly motivated in this game. I just think the style that Kansas State plays, they can run the ball with their running back. They can run the ball with their quarterback. They can make explosive plays in the running game. They can throw a little bit if they need to, and they're just too well coached, too consistent. You know exactly what you're going to get. I don't like the matchup for Colorado. I think it's the exact type of team that exposes some of their weaknesses.
Now, we disagree on this Penn State USC game, which should be a good game, your classic Big Ten conference game here. I think that I always like a market correction. I think no one really saw that Minnesota result coming for USC, so you're getting a good price. If USC wins that game against Minnesota, this might be a pick'em game. I think already Penn State and James Franklin are complaining about the wrong things. I don't really think that people want to talk about Miami's soft schedule. I don't really think Penn State's been all that tested. This is a nice test. Now, I'm not saying USC is going to win the game, although they might put the town on alert play for the week. I'm putting Penn State on upset alert, so we're sprinkling on the money line there. But I think that this game will be within that number, that 5.5. Things can get screwy late night with cross-country flights, as we all learned. So I'm going to take the points in this one, D.
Your logic is sound. I mean, I have certain biases when it comes to coaching. These genius OC guys that are head coaches, I don't like them. I don't trust them, especially in college when you have to build a program. And, I know.
But it's just funny because you're about to trust James Franklin.
Well, let's talk about
in a big game.
So, when I like to make the coaching hot takes, I've said for many years, as long as you've known me and talked about this issue, that Mike Tomlin is the best coach in the NFL, not Bill Belichick. I was saying that before Bill Belichick imploded, and now he's running around going to Taylor Swift concerts or whatever he's doing.
Wearing Taylor Swift shirts.
Okay, whatever he's doing.
Well, what he's doing are 20-year-old. So,
well, Mike Tomlin is leading these jabronis to win after win after win. So that's what I like. I like consistency that doesn't matter who the player is at quarterback, you're going to get the job done. And I think Tomlin is that in the pros. One of the hot takes I had that used to be laughed at was that James Franklin is not only a better coach than Lincoln Riley, he is a significantly better coach than Lincoln Riley. I've been saying it for years, and I believe it with every fiber of my being. Lincoln Riley inherited a program that was on complete autopilot at Oklahoma. They had won every single year. Oklahoma, since they won the championship, had been good every single year. They're on about a 2-decade run of being good and being exactly what they were. He got some good players there. He got Heisman, first-round picks, first overall picks, and he did well with them. He called good plays for him. But it's not like he built Oklahoma into any kind of program. He inherited a program that was on autopilot. He goes to USC, and they suck. They're soft. They wasted Caleb Williams his entire career.
They win a Heisman, which
is that team award? Is there one?
No.
Are there 22 Heismans up there?
Lincoln Riley's really good at winning his quarterback's Heisman.
Yeah. They tremendous underachieving from Lincoln Riley to this point. And then you look at James Franklin. James Franklin goes to Vanderbilt. He has 2 9-win seasons. We're talking about Vanderbilt winning one game. Vanderbilt won 9 games in this, and they were SEC at that time as well, twice with James Franklin. Goes to Penn State, which is a pedo factory, a complete debacle of a program, the most disgraceful program in the country. And what does he do? First rounder after first rounder, double-digit win season after double-digit win season. They're complaining that he doesn't beat Michigan and Ohio State.
Yeah, you're glossing over that. What does he do? You outline what he does. I can outline what he doesn't do, and that's win big games. And we can move the goalposts on whether or not this is a big game. And I agree with you. Your Lincoln Riley takes her on the money, D. But we're at that point in the football calendar where people start complaining about James Franklin. And I actually think James Franklin would be a knockout hire for the University of Florida, too. I know you've workshopped that take in group chats, but I think James Franklin teams have a ceiling. We're about to reach that ceiling, and I just don't trust them. I don't trust either of these coaches, so I'm flipping a coin here and saying it's a market correction week. Didn't expect them to lose to Minnesota, but we're back in the friendly confines of the West Coast. That's tough for Penn State. I'm going to take USC with the points here.
Yeah, that'd be a fun game to watch. Classic. I mean, you get these Rose Bowl matchups in conference now. It's the weirdest thing in the world.
They better not keep the Big Ten championship in Lucas Oil Field. That's a weird place for this. If we're essentially having these Rose Bowl matchups
right,
and we've combined essentially the Pac-12 with the Big Ten, guys, listen to me. This advice is free. The Big Ten championship needs to be in the Rose Bowl henceforth.
Great take.
So take that take. I like Iowa inside the Big Ten. Weird, funky new start. Washington, that's a national championship college football playoff final rematch. Their season was on the rocks. They just lost to Rutgers. They poured everything into that game against Michigan, who I think is going to get caught a few more times this season because there's just no balance on that team. Washington had the game of their season, for their head coach there. That's all fine and dandy. Now you're in a rock fight in the middle of America with an Iowa team that loves the noon start there. And I just think that's a market correction game as well. Highs and lows. It's big-time college football this year, and Iowa probably loved watching you celebrate that victory as if it meant something last week, Washington. I'm sure to you and your fan base it did, but they don't care about college football playoff national championship rematches down there in Iowa. They care about getting 3.5 yards at a time, waving to some kids across the way, and making you wonder aloud, how did we just lose to this team? So I think that's another vintage Iowa performance this week.
Another Rose Bowl game, by the way, too.
Yeah,
Washington. I mean, it feels wrong.
You're doing something that I really like. I just don't trust Venables. He's been in good betting spots this year, mixed results. But what are you doing with this Oklahoma at 14.5? You just know the history of this rivalry.
Yeah, I gotta say, all of them, this is the one I feel the least comfortable with. It's just the history of the rivalry. It's just there's such a consistency of close games here. Aside from 2022, pretty much every game has been well within the spread. I don't think Texas is a dominant team. You know, I know they're ranked obviously very high and they have a good team. I think they still have their own holes in terms.
They're getting the quarterback back, so I would say I'd say you're right. I think they kind of struggled a little bit with Mississippi State, and no one really talked about it. But you also have to tip the hat and say they are playing, even though he's highly touted, their backup quarterback.
And Michigan, you know, they're a debacle, you know, as far as the offensive end of the ball. So that win in retro, you know, you make your name on that win. I don't know how great you feel about it. They're good. I don't see a huge difference in talent. I think Texas is the better team. I do. But I think Oklahoma has good players. Texas has some good players. Oklahoma has some good coaches. Texas has some good coaches. They're going to be playing with tremendous intensity. I don't see a 14.5 point spread unless the true freshman quarterback for Oklahoma has a game. You know,
I'm too scarred from betting the Red River, so I'll sit this one out. I don't like the 3:30 start. I know that's an SEC window, but for me, this game belongs at high noon. I'm a little bummed about that, but kudos to you, braver man than I. I will be sitting this one out. For my final pick, Cal Pitt, it's pretty simple. Pitt's played really well this season, but they've all been super close games. I have a healthy respect for Cal. My eyes were not lying to me. Even in their losses, they were close losses. You can explain them away. Cross country, missed field goals against an abysmal FSU team. We'll see how I feel about that loss come the end of the year. But I just know from seeing this Cal team up close and personal, they got some good players there. Still, I guess not right, Pete, because there were times that I'm wondering, he looks spry. Why isn't he out there?
Listen, Pete Thamel said he was 100%, but I had I had our guy Jim McGill from Bear Insider on, and he told me straight up, and we recorded this on Thursday afternoon. He said he's not 100%. So when that report came out, I said I'm going with Big Jim McGill and what he told me earlier in the week. So I agree with that. Although he did look pretty good, on that long touchdown there. But
did he look out of bounds? Because I didn't see that aggregated by college football Reddit.
I mean, listen, obviously on the pictures that we've all seen, it looked like it was out of bounds.
It's
But
just
it never
funny.
was brought up one time on the broadcast.
It's funny.
So.
Apparently, bad calls only exist in the fourth quarter, and they only happen, in Miami's favor. It's just weird. I could have sworn against Virginia Tech, I saw a 50-plus yard field goal go in with 2 number 17s on the field, but that never entered the discourse. So it's curious. But to wrap up the Cal point, good players on defense too. I'm gonna lock this bet in at 3.5 because I think that hook looms large there. Maybe Pitt continues being a team that's a little like Miami in 2017, just skating by on these one-score victories, but that's still a one-score loss. If you get that hook right there, 3.5, I like Cal to finish inside that number. I think it'll be a close game. I'm excited to watch it, actually.
By the way, we got a great question here from Boyo in Hamburg. Pete, you know what to do with that question here. Boyo in Hamburg in Germany wants to know, not to spoil your love affair with Islas Canarias, wearing the shirt right now, corgetacounty.com if you want the merch. Look at this nice boat shirt. They got T-shirts, they got hats, they got the whole thing. But are they not serving Spanish food? That island chain, the Canary Islands, is off the west coast of Africa, belonging to Spain. So first of all, Pete, you got the
Yes,
site ready?
I do.
Before I answer this question,
I can see D-Money. Let's clear a lane. He's about to
before
cook with a history lesson right now.
Before we answer this
The
question,
postures change.
bring it up. Let's talk about
The postures change. We got a D-Money lesson coming our way.
Let's talk about this authentic Cuban cuisine at Islas Canarias. Traditional decor, just an unbelievable spot. Anyone who's been there knows. Every time I post about this or producing on social media, I get a million responses from my man Armando and other fans at Islas Canarias posting their plates at this spot. Truly the most authentic Cuban cuisine in the world, certainly in the United States, and the best in the world. Anthony Bourdain went to Islas Canarias when he came to Miami, drove basically to the Everglades to go to this place because he knew that was the real spot. But luckily, you don't have to drive that far. If you don't live there, you can go to Dadeland at the dining pavilion, the food court, and get Islas Canarias Express. You can order online here at islascanarias.com. And by the way, if you like the merch, like I said, croquetacounty.com. But let's talk about this. So I don't know exactly why this restaurant is called Islas Canarias. I'm assuming that the Andrade family and my man John, their whole lineage on at least one side descends from people from the Canary Islands. I can say that I descend from people from the Canary Islands. My last name on my mom's side, Wanche. The Wanches were Berbers from North Africa who went to the Canary Islands because it's really, like he said, it's off the coast of Africa. And there were the indigenous people there because they came from Africa. So when the Spaniards got to the Canary Islands, they were like, who are these natives? They don't look like the natives, on the other, these are some strange looking natives. And they, did what they do. They took them over and they mixed and whatever. But those were the Wanches. They were indigenous people of the Canary Islands who looked different than the indigenous people in the Americas. Just a unique people that were really Berbers from North Africa. And that is where my lineage comes from. Even though I am Cuban on both sides, my parents both born in Cuba, my mom's side goes from the Canary Islands off the coast of Africa. And I know many people are the same. Shout out to the Wanches. And shout out to the whole island.
Yes, shout out to those islands.
So, anyways,
you got to get the story from John though, because Boyo seems he seems like he really wants he wants the full answer there.
Matt, listen. That's
Boyo, what a life!
I was talking about
born in Mallorca, now in Hamburg. What's your FIFA rating, pal?
So, are we going to get to everyone's favorite part of the week here?
Wait, hold on, Pete. I'm putting a link in the chat. Pull it up here.
He says great explanation.
Thank you. Pull up the link in the chat. So the Wanches, again, a unique native tribe because they're really African. They're North African that were the natives, and then they mixed with the Spaniards, and then you had, that's why I don't really look that Cuban traditionally because my hair is straight and I got I got a different look than the average Cuban. Here's some Wanches right here. Check these guys out. Look at this young lady. I don't know why she has dreads.
She looks like she's at Bonnaroo. Are you sure that wasn't taken at Bonnaroo?
Was she at the War on Drugs concert? They weren't getting down like that.
And Boyle says he was raised in Cutler Ridge. So
I've seen that girl at a Bass
been across the
Nectar
map.
show. I've seen that girl at a Bass Nectar concert, no doubt. On the rail.
All right, so you want to get some let's get some football before we get totally off the rails here. P, what do you got? What do you got? You've been sitting out there. The people
I've been bringing up pretty much everything I've been seeing here that I thought was worthwhile.
This is a big college football weekend, Pete. What are you looking forward to?
I was gonna just jump in and say, because I had a couple different teams than you guys that I thought were overrated. And
yeah, let's hear them.
I mean, Penn State being one of them. I agree with you, D. I'm a James Franklin guy, but I think they're due.
We're just at that point in the college football calendar where people complain about James Franklin and Penn State. We're there.
Notre Dame. I'm going Notre Dame too. Obviously, they had the big win against A&M week 1. They beat Louisville last week. But I think they're limited. I like Riley Leonard a lot, but I want to see them trust his arm a little bit more.
Real bad loss, huh? That's a real terrible loss.
Yeah, that Northern Illinois loss. Yep.
That might go away now. Oh, we should talk about this. The new proposal, that article by Ross Dellinger about the different private equity kind of super league ideas. One of them,
Dan Radakovich quoted in the story.
Quoted, exactly.
Which I found interesting.
Oh yeah, this is going down. This is not the way you could tell by the way it was talked about. This is not just a pie in the sky idea. You know, one of the ideas was having all 70, basically having the 70 main teams having their own league, cutting out the games with the Kent States of the world and the FCS games, and having only games that you could really sell, and improving your media rights that way by just having better product to sell, not having these weird kind of inefficient FCS and lower FBS games. I know it's part of the charm, but
such an arbitrary number, though. I mean, just if we were to listen to what bureaucrats were telling us, who are the right teams that belong in this league, in this conference, I'm looking at an SMU team that a lot of people had opinions about, and they're undefeated inside the conference. I just saw Miami barely make it out of Cal Berkeley, and I see Florida State, who made the biggest stink of all of them.
Cal. After that the chant, the chant, the Bear Territory, unbelievable chant, the cool old stadium, we're keeping Cal. Sorry,
it's just, I think you get into a slippery slope, but look, the landscape will continue to change. I'm just happy that Dan Radakovich, who Miami's been playing this quietly, doing the right things in terms of public optics. It could have done without like the very public praise of the ACC, but that's fine. Dan Radakovich and Miami are playing a game right now, and it's to put themselves in this position. They knew if they focus on the field, the opportunities would come to them. So the fact that Dan Rad is quoted in that story makes me actually think, for once, when it comes to this whole college football reshaping, that Miami's in a more advantageous position and more involved than certainly they had been with the whole ACC talk. So slow playing it the right way. Cal Twitter, the Calgorithm had a peace treaty with Miami because we were so welcoming there. And then they wouldn't let me into their bars after we won. But I don't know what this national letter of intent thing does. I've seen people argue both sides of it. I don't really have a strong opinion on the matter.
Yeah, I guess it's just obsolete. I honestly, I read the article and I still I don't understand it that much myself. I think it's just because now you're binding players to a school for money, that there's going to be a new document besides a national letter of intent. So it's just kind of obsolete in the era.
Yeah, I think it's
so flip contract. Season might not be as dramatic as it's been.
Mm-hmm. Oh no. Well, in general, it hasn't been as dramatic, I think, lately since the end. I mean, Pete, you tell me if I'm wrong.
We peaked with Travis Hunter.
Oh, that was the best.
That was an all-timer. That's one of Miami's best wins in the last 20 years. The day that Travis Hunter didn't commit to Florida State.
It's funny. So when that happened, I remember thinking, like, FSU's so done. They're just this is the bottom. They will never recover from this. And then they went and won. So I remember thinking, like, man, they really rebounded from this. But it turns out that they really are not going to recover from it. That was just a mirage. Their recruiting class right now, let's pull this up.
They expanded their board, though.
Yeah.
There was a board expansion.
They're making multiple positions.
They're making highlight reels for this guy throwing like 5-yard passes. They're doing all this stuff you do when you have a horrible team. I remember.
We've been there.
Oh my! So see,
not too long ago.
So Florida State's recruiting class is 34. Let's look at the teams. All right, I'm going to read you. This is fun. I'm going to read you guys the 29 through 37 on the 247, just to give you an idea of this general range. 29, Arkansas. 30, UCF. 31, Baylor, and their coach is about to get fired. 32, Duke, Manny Diaz. 33, Mississippi State. 34, Florida State. 35, Syracuse. 36, Stanford. 37, the Florida Gators. And we took a recruit from them yesterday, Josh Moore. Check out the instant react we did on YouTube. Still a couple more that you want from that Florida class with Vernell Brown and Ben Hanks, two of the best players in the state, probably the two best players in the state.
Real big game for that then this weekend against Tennessee. And those games, a lot like Red River, they're always kind of screwy and a little unpredictable. And I'm a little worried about the audience, but so I'm not going to float them out there. But I kind of think that Florida is a little bit underrated. When you look at the teams that they've lost to this season, both atop their conference, I think I speak for everybody here. We're a little surprised by that performance against UCF. A little disappointed in UCF. That was a lot of talk that program had in its fan base, and they got played off that pitch. So I think Florida can hang with Tennessee. Maybe Tennessee had the loss happen to them at the right time in the calendar so they can fix some things there. But certainly tactically, there's some things there that Billy Napier and his staff can seize on. I don't see
He's doing a tremendous job, Mike.
You gotta keep him hired.
Playing hard.
Keep him employed.
And listen, I think that it would be too soon to fire him. They, just keep playing hard.
I think you got to keep plugging away with this coach. I'm seeing good signs.
I'm of two minds. I mean, obviously the joke is keep him around because he's terrible, but I'd love for him to get fired just to get these players. Ben Hanks, Bruno Brown, DJ Lagway, these are impact guys that can change your program. We're trying to win championships. Gators are so far away. It's going to take a while to catch up. I'm worried about getting just the three guys that might put us over the hump to win that championship. So I'm of two minds there. I kind of want him to get fired. They're going to screw up the replacement anyways. So what do we got to worry about?
Osco Dog, another question here asking about who we expect to ascend. Again, we talked about a lot of this on the show yesterday, so go check that out if you have not already.
I'm hoping we've had good luck with receivers stepping up early, but when Jacoby George went out in that game and we saw JoJo Trader get called on, he didn't exactly answer the bell in this game. So hopefully that's a performance that he can build on and get a little bit better. But my players to watch are the guys that are the impact freshmen that you've seen kind of flash already in the early parts of the season, because I think in the second half of the season, they're going to continue to develop and get more snaps. And that's Jordan Lyle and that's Elijah Lofton. I don't know exactly how Elijah Lofton gets it because he's got much tougher competition in his tight end room than Lyle has. Lyle has guys in his sights that he can conceivably catch this year from a talent perspective. Lofton's in a really impressive room. Like all those guys might be first round picks when it's all said and done, which is crazy. We might be tight end you again. That's something that's percolating. So keep an eye on that.
Yeah. Shout out to Grandpa Jim, Riley Williams' grandpa out there on the beach. Riley Williams continues to impress blocking. And he's not a blocking tight end. He really is a receiving tight end. That's what we got him for. He can run after the catch. He can catch with his hands. He can run routes. So to compliment his blocking is not like faint praise. It means this guy's becoming a complete player. And when you have that kind of size that Riley Williams has, if you have the ability to block and not just be big for nothing, it elevates you to a whole new level of being a complete type of player. And Riley Williams, really impressed by what he's doing there. Arroyo, you already know. You mentioned Elijah Lofton. Mentioned his room. I mean, again, you could put him in the running back room. I'm telling you, seeing him in spring, he's a real running back. He is not.
He was the most impressive running back in spring, right?
And he wasn't just like running like with his hair on fire. He was setting guys up. He was like the Clint Porter. He put his hand on the offensive lineman's back and let the blocks develop. This guy's a real tailback when he wants to be. And I think we'll see some of that when the time is right this season. Maybe he'll be coming out the bye. You come out the bye, you got some scheming going on with an Elijah Lofton. Louisville hasn't seen all the things he can do. So, although I don't think we're going to need that many tricks to score against Louisville, man. That defense stinks.
That was really bad against SMU. I'm really surprised that Louisville dropped that one. I do think Louisville is a good team. I don't think this is a team that you should take lightly. Maybe caught a break with that noon start. Certainly college football fans down here caught a break with that because if you've seen that weekend slate of games, it's unreal. It's going to be touted as like the best weekend in college football history. And with the noon start, now your helmet's in the graphic because you're the marquee noon game against Louisville, but it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a tough opponent. And I think the last 2 weeks have told us to not take anything for granted inside of this conference. Nice little revenge game too, especially for Coach Guidry, who I know for a fact didn't appreciate the commentary after that game, because Braum kind of took his lunch in that game. I was certainly one of those talking heads out there saying that was Guidry's defense's worst performance of the season. Braum was just all over what Miami was trying to do there. So hopefully that was motivation for this rematch here, and Guidry's got a little something for Braum, because he needs to step up, especially after these last 2 weeks. Been a little harder on the defense.
Yeah, no question. By the way, shout out to Anijar and Levine. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anijar and Levine. And we got to talk about the team store. Pete, pull up the front page. The shoes are in. The new Adidas are up and running. People have been asking, what are these things going to drop? They have dropped. They are available in the Miami Hurricane Team Store. You can get the link to the Miami Hurricane Team Store on our website. It's in the description. Also, just MiamiHTS.com. Or you can go to the physical store in Coral Gables. Promo code Insight20. You get 20% off. There it is. The Adidas Alpha Boost 2 coming soon. But they're here. They arrived. Guess so grab them. Get your order, and you'll be able to get those. Insight20 for 20% off of the Alpha Boost. So shout out there. So Pete, where we're going here? Where we're going to go first? You tell us.
Listen, it's
your.
Oh,
how'd you get? Oh, there you are.
Sorry,
Can't when he does a PIP.
It doesn't. We got one computer back here. We don't have an entire production setup, so I do what I can.
Pete, where in Africa is your family from?
Cote d'Ivoire.
Okay.
Hey Pete, how about the pound? Can you do the pound? Is that possible? Give me a pound. I want to see how that works.
A what?
Like a
pound.
pound.
He wants a pound.
Yeah.
Other way.
Well, you pounded me.
Oh, nice. We got to start doing this.
There you go.
Yeah, we got to start doing this. Remember that one. Store that one in the book of tricks. All right.
So
what we got first?
Wrestling segment.
All right, let's go. So, I'll start.
He was really jacked up for that.
I'll start. Obviously, didn't get to see the Bad Blood pay-per-view live because we were at the California game. I still haven't seen the main event. I know some crazy stuff went down, but I'm trying to avoid the spoilers as much as I can. But first match, CM Punk, Drew McIntyre, Hell in a Cell. Honestly, the best match I've seen probably since at least Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania.
Really that good?
Oh, phenomenal. But better because you could bleed. They're bleeding now. Blood is back in the WWE. If you haven't watched WWE in a while, if you just watched the Vince McMahon documentary and you're like, hey, I want to start getting back into this, get my kids back into it.
I gotta watch it because CM Punk hasn't exactly delivered in the ring over the last few years. So I'm happy that he broke the schneid.
He wasn't doing all this crazy flips that he can't do. He was just focusing on what he can do, storytelling, good looking punches, good contact, very physical match, but not a very, high spotty match. It was simple high spots, but effective. I'm not a CM Punk fan at all. He reminds me of Aaron Rodgers personality wise, just like a guy who thinks he's smart. I dislike the guy personally, at least from what I've seen from him, but he delivered in this match, and blood is back in wrestling officially. There was so much blood in this match. It was obscene. They actually had to clean up Drew McIntyre during the match.
16.
He busted hard way. 16
staples.
Yeah, and it was it wasn't even a blade. It was the toolbox that he got hit with. They busted him open. So the ref came in and was like cleaning off his face. And Corey Graves did the great save. He said, well, he's cleaning his face so he could see, because you got to clean their eyes or else they can't see punches coming their way. So nice job by Corey Graves saving that. Awesome
so considerate
match.
Inside of Satan's structure.
That's it.
When you're inside of Satan's structure, you got to be able to see the punches coming.
That's it.
Okay.
There's rules there. All right, what's up?
All right. My wrestler of the week is Eddie Guerrero. It is Eddie Guerrero, the late Eddie Guerrero's birthday. Today we share a birthday. Eddie Guerrero, in terms of in-ring, at his peak, was as good as anybody. Really selling throughout the entire match. Innovative when it came to offense. His rivalry in ECW with Dean Malenko really opened a whole generation's eyes open to what is possible inside that ring, especially with undersized guys. Eddie Guerrero then worked very hard on his body, maybe to the long-term detriment of his health, to be considered as a big-time heavyweight, eventual world champion. He beats Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship. Had a really good program going with Batista that was about to really pop off and maybe end in another world championship for Eddie Guerrero before we lost him. Unfortunately, suffered a heart attack in his hotel room. But one thing that you mentioned CM Punk before, Eddie Guerrero, when he had his drug issues and WWE fired him and he was out on the indie scene, he went to Ring of Honor and he worked matches against guys like CM Punk, and he had a good match, I think, with I think Rey Mysterio even on the indie scene too. There's some really good old DVDs that you could find of that early stage of ROH where Eddie Guerrero used that promotion to help build his own credibility up in the ring, get clean, and also help lift what was, outside of ECW, the main third promotion in terms of star-making vehicles in this 21st century. So I think Eddie Guerrero was really good to the business. I think he's still invoked with Dominic Mysterio, who it's canon on TV. That's still his dad. He's got the mullet and the mustache to honor him. But everything that Rhea Ripley is doing right now with Dom, that's just what China and Eddie Guerrero were doing before. Shifting the power dynamics with a couple there in wrestling. Just really good in the ring. Was really sad to see him go. One of the best of all time, Eddie Guerrero. Rest in peace.
Yeah, I didn't know that about Ring of Honor. That's pretty cool. I'm gonna go check that out.
Yeah, real good matches.
You were almost a Ring of Honor superstar at some point.
I was thinking they were a star-making factory, no doubt, irrefutable. Ring of Honor had one of the best schools to train people if you were into that kind of thing. And look, we're talking about guys right now: Eddie Guerrero, CM Punk. Both went through those doors. Both don't have the careers that they do if we're not for that stop of Ring of Honor. So I'm a big ROH fan.
Seth Rollins too. One match that jumps to my mind with Eddie Guerrero was Halloween Havoc 1997. I remember it deeply because it was the same day as the Marlins winning the World Series against the Cleveland Indians.
Wow.
So I had
the same day?
Same day. I had the two TVs set up. There was Roddy Piper against Hogan in the main event in a cage match. But the match that was the match people remember from that show was Eddie Guerrero against Rey Mysterio. Mysterio had the full phantom.
Because it was a mask. Purple. It was a mask match. And we thought he'd figure it out. Like, oh, he's just got a full body suit. So he can't tear the mask. That didn't stop Eddie from trying.
Best match of that type that I've seen. And what I like about it is, you had the flips that Rey Mysterio really is the one that made what you see today. He's the kind of the guy that popularized it. But if you watch the match, hard hitting, and you always believed that Eddie did not like Rey Mysterio, that he was trying to hurt him, that they were not working together to do moves, that he was trying to hurt him. He brought a lot of intensity to that match, made it very believable.
Yeah.
Best lucha match that I've ever seen.
For an undersized guy to have such a powerful offensive set to really come off, but through good kicks, through good punches, his power bombs when he was working with smaller guys, they seemed vicious. He's a smaller guy when he's up against the likes of Brock Lesnar, but in the cruiserweight division, he's one of the bigger guys, but he can make guys look like $1 million in that ring. Just a pro's pro, would sell. You want to talk about blade jobs, had an all-timer. JBL doesn't become the superstar that he became in that era without Eddie Guerrero helping put him over and bleeding basically almost to death inside the ring against JBL. Really great matches that should be revisited. His rivalries with Rey Mysterio in multiple promotions are well charted and dissected. Absolutely catch that Halloween Havoc match out there, because that's one of the matches where the gimmick totally helped. Hell in a Cell, looks like Drew and CM Punk use that gimmick to their advantage. Halloween Havoc, the mask, which is kind of like a played out gimmick a little bit, especially in the internet age when you know what everybody looks like, but they absolutely use that to their advantage in that match. And it's still talked about to this day.
Yep. And the Marlins won. Shout out to
Edgar Renteria.
That was it.
Craig Counsell.
So interesting comment here. It was about Mario equaling Goldberg. So Goldberg was actually in attendance at Bad Blood. Saw him and his son. I think his son plays for
Gage plays for Colorado.
For Colorado, yeah, and they had a bye, so he was out there. But Mario actually said after his appearance on game day on the road in Cal that he felt like Roddy Piper when he goes out there and gets booed as the heel, on the road with every fan against him. So Mario, big wrestling guy, dropping the wrestling reference.
And a nice little zinger on Coach Saban there that even Saban didn't really catch in that moment, but nice little appearance for Mario Cristobal there. Made some people laugh.
Yeah, shout out to UM's communications team, the best in the business.
Communications.
So let's talk music here, people. We got who's going first?
I'll go ahead. My dad recently turned 70, and for his 70th birthday, he made a not so subtle request to have a Miami Vice themed birthday party. It was the 40th anniversary of Miami Vice and his 70th birthday, so it made a lot of sense. But I put together a playlist for my dad's birthday, and naturally you get the Miami Vice theme song in there. Jan Hammer made the Miami Vice theme song, and I revisited this entire album where it's all like synthy scores that he had. They had commercial music, no doubt, on Miami Vice. It's synonymous with the show, but they had an original score that Jan Hammer put out there, and everybody knows the Miami Vice theme, or maybe not Pete, but most people of a certain age know the Miami Vice theme. But I revisited a track that I actually think is low-key better off of that soundtrack than the actual theme it's known for, and that's Crockett's theme. That's an absolute banger. Jan Hammer puts you with a vice cop in Miami in the 80s, just with one signature sound. So sonically, he was doing some creative stuff. Nice, healthy amounts of 80s cheese, but that's synth pop of the time. But I really like this. This beat kind of bangs. Like someone could totally sample this. It could work today. It's a super cool, kind of low-key haunting track. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, you sent me the song, so on the way over, I drove through downtown listening to it. And I definitely felt
drive through downtown with the top down at night with that, and it'll hit different.
Yeah, I'm not driving downtown with the with the top down.
Why? The hair is going to be certainly not this
week.
If
we're talking about Miami Beach, I'm driving around top down all day, blasting this next song right here. In fact, after the gym this morning, I put down the top and blasted this particular song right here. And that is Waylon Jennings. Loving Her Was Easier Than Anything I'll Ever Do Again. And there's Waylon Jennings. What a legend with the slick back hair. But it's really not about Waylon Jennings. It's about Chris Christopherson, the songwriter of this song, who passed away last week. We usually do the gimmick where we pick a songwriter or musician from the town we're playing. Bye week, I figured, let's honor Chris Christopherson. This guy is such a legend. A lot of you guys remember him as Whistler from the Blade movies as an actor. He was also the original Bradley Cooper in Star is Born, with Barbra Streisand being Lady Gaga. This guy was the Bradley Cooper. Bradley Cooper, Lady Gaga kind of updated it for the new era. It was a good movie. I mean,
if you look at that Lady Gaga IMDb, there's only one thing that is any good, and it's A Star is Born. So a rough go of it for our Lady Gaga.
She belongs in the studio. We need another classic from her. But with Chris Christopherson, the guy, he acted. He was a college football player. He was a Rhodes Scholar, went to Oxford for writing. That's where he got his great lyrics. Went into the Army. He was driving helicopters, left his family to be a songwriter, drove a helicopter onto Johnny Cash's lawn and dropped off, I guess, his demo or whatever. I don't know how you gave people your songs back in the day, but gave Johnny Cash songs by landing a helicopter on his lawn.
That's badass.
The guy's a complete
legend. Did that on purpose?
Oh,
not the Jerry Lee Lewis thing where he drove onto Graceland saying, I'm here to kill Elvis. You want to talk about white privilege? Jerry Lee Lewis. Let's do a whole segment on that. What are you here for? I'm here to kill Elvis Presley. All right, why don't you just drive back home? You look like you're fine.
I got a lot of strong opinions on all those guys. I can't say. I'm a big fan of Jerry Lee Lewis. Jerry Lee Lewis had a live album in Germany, which I think you can only get on YouTube because of, I don't know, the fact that he married his cousin that's 13 and he gets canceled in certain quarters.
Yeah.
But he has
that whole thing. Married your 13-year-old cousin.
It's, I don't
and
judge.
By the way, there's a lot more to the Jerry Lee Lewis story. I think you're just kind of like, skimming it.
Listen to the album he did live. I think it was in Hamburg, maybe in Vienna.
Possibly a murder.
Somewhere in Central Europe.
Possibly a murder.
It was the original punk rock, but he was on a piano. Incredible energy. I'll send it to you after the show. But
I will not be doing what D-Money did, which is in the year 2024 saying, I'm a big Jerry Lee Lewis fan.
Phenomenal artist, which I believe Jerry Lee Lewis covered some of these Chris Christopherson songs. I want to say he did if he did one of them. I'll do some work on that.
Did he do murder?
There's different accounts.
He
I don't
might
judge.
have done murder.
People sing about murder all the time nowadays.
Communications.
It's a common theme of songs. Anyways, Chris Christopherson wrote some classics covered by the likes of Elvis. I think Jerry Lee Lewis. I got to look that up. Definitely Waylon Jennings, which is
Jerry Lee Lewis said he wanted to kill your guy Elvis, and you're still like a Jerry Lee Lewis guy.
Hot-blooded. He was upset at the time. It's like what's a love-hate relationship.
That's not how rage works. You don't think things through.
He's the killer. They call him the killer
because he was a killer. They called him the killer because he killed somebody.
Has there ever been a better album title? I don't know. We're talking about Jerry Lewis. It's supposed to be about Chris Christopherson and Waylon Jennings, but has there ever been a better title of an album than All Killer No Filler? Jerry Lee Lewis. I mean, what a badass title from Jerry Lee. And you got Blackball. He marries 13-year-old cousin.
Chocolate starfish and the hot dog flavored water.
Have you ever heard Dirty Sprite? Future.
That's a good one. DS2. Yeah. I remember.
So those are two that are better, no doubt. So we thought of two.
check out there's a Chris Christopherson playlist. If you go on a Chris Christopherson deep dive, the ultimate lyricist of country, probably second only to Hank Williams, the original Hank Williams, as far as lyric.
What's a better album, that or the Chocolate Factory?
Oh, wait, what do we compare?
Album, just album names.
Album, Chocolate Factory, I mean, clears. Who are we comparing it to?
The Jerry Lee Lewis album.
Oh, All Killer, No Filler?
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to go down this road. You're trying to bait me.
I am.
You're trying to bait me.
Yeah, I wasn't. Look, listen, how we got on Jerry Lee Lewis was you. You provided that on-ramp.
About his music. It's tremendous.
Now, I may be fishing here with the Chocolate Factory, but
here's what I'll say. I don't judge. Listen, if you're going to cancel people for things they've done and their sexual proclivities, your playlist is going to be garbage. It's going to be like one of these Cal fans playlist. Okay. I prefer a more fulsome playlist with classics. So I'm not trying to be Sherlock Holmes on what these guys did or did not do.
The DJ at Cal Berkeley rocked it.
He was pretty
good.
That
was a great DJ.
He was pretty good.
But don't play Pepas when a Miami team needs a comeback. That's your first mistake. They played Pepas. Never play Pepas.
They did do that. That's right.
And we went on a run. They might as well have shown Trick Daddy on the screen. What are you doing?
They sure did. Chris Christopherson, for the good times, help me make it through the night. What else you got? Sunday Morning Coming Down, which is how a lot of those Cal fans felt. You ever heard that song?
By Waylon Jennings?
No, well, he covered it. Johnny Cash covered it. It was originally Chris Christopherson. Me and Bobby McGee. What am I saying? Me and Bobby McGee by Janis Joplin was actually Chris Christopherson.
Peter was actually showing me that one. He was showing me that one before the show. Yeah. He loves that track.
Here we go. Chris Christopherson, Highwayman. Yeah, this was a super group. You had Waylon Jennings in that group. You had Johnny Cash, Chris Christopherson, Willie Nelson.
I'm not going to make you feel bad about liking those guys. I'm a David Bowie fan. I'm a Prince fan. I'm an Elvis fan.
Tupac.
All those guys.
Tupac.
All those guys have bad things around them. I'm a Kendrick Lamar fan.
Rolling Stones.
Kendrick Lamar reveals things in his music that make you say, wait, is he in character or did he really do this stuff? Like, you have to separate the art from the artist. But one thing that you can avoid is being like, the killer. That guy's awesome.
He is awesome. I wish we didn't have copyright restrictions on the show so I could show you this guy playing piano and how awesome.
There's a threshold. And Jerry Lee Lewis might be a tipping point.
Every culture is different. I was not alive in the 60s in the South, deep South. I don't know how they got down with their marriage norms. So,
how did they get down with murder?
It depends how good you were at music. And obviously this guy was pretty sick.
Yeah.
So
sick, all right.
On that note,
how's that wiki page looking? Pretty bad, huh?
I'm just saying. I'm trusting Mike here because,
he's easy to trap when it comes to music because he likes all those guys.
I listen. It takes a certain type of person to pour yourself into. If you pour your whole life into music, you might not fit into society at large because you are so in the music. If you fit into society, you might not be as deep into the music as you should be. Like Bruce Springsteen, normal guy. Music, take it or leave it.
Mid. I'm sorry.
Mid.
I'm not a sports writer from the Northeast. It's not for me. I understand the appeal. It's just not for me. I've tried to get into it. Not for me.
Now, Bruce Springsteen had some kind of like weird family, that he was hiding, that it was not societally acceptable. Maybe his music would have been better because he would have been crazier a little bit and more into the music. He's too into society.
I think you were right to kind of shut the show down a little bit before you dig yourself a deeper trench.
I forgot what we were talking about. Jerry Lee Lewis.
We were talking about murder.
No filler. Waylon Jennings. Loving her was easier than anything I'll ever do.
Communications.
Again, communications. Shout out to the whole communications department. Canes win this week, 50-0. Go Canes.
Go
Happy
Canes.
birthday,
Remember to like and subscribe.
Thank you, D-Money. Like and subscribe. Hop out, Pete.